Hello students, welcome back to my class. Today we are going to study a prose piece. A prose piece which is the experience of a British forest officer of Assam before independence of India. এইটো এটা গদ্য যিটো এজন জংগল বিভাগৰ অফিচাৰ তেখেত ব্ৰিটেনৰ পৰা অহা তেখেত অসমৰ সেই সময়ৰ সমসাময়িক অসমৰ বিষয়ত যিটো অভিজ্ঞতা সেইটো সম্পৰ্কত লিখিছে. So this topic is Memoirs of a Chota Sahib, which is taken from his book A Chota Sahib, Memoirs of a Forest Officer. So who is this officer? This officer is known as John Rowntree, who was the last British senior conservator of forests of Assam. Because he just came before independence and he left just after a few days of independence. And most of his time he spent in Guwahati and thereafter in Shillong. By the time of independence, he was living in Shillong, then capital of Assam. So here, his narrative is very simple, and it is also very light, not very serious, because he discusses everything in a very friendly manner, as if he is talking to his friends. And the very first thing that he narrates is his arrival. He is telling that after a very tortuous zigzag journey in most part of the northern India, he lands in the Guwahati port and immediately he is finding the climate bearable. So now you can know that to a British officer who is coming for the first time to Assam, it is a very bearable, a likable climate. Because throughout the North India, he was encountering heat and dust. Because the British had described India as a land of heat and dust. So he encountered heat. বিভিন্ন ঠাইত তেওঁ অসহ্য গৰম আৰু ধূলা সহ্য কৰি কৰি আহি যেতিয়া গুৱাহাটী পাইছে তেতিয়া কি পাইছে এটো এটা comfortable zone, a bearable climate. And then he describes about the Guwahati port as the most interactive place where people often travel from other parts of India, land here, and from here they go to Shillong, the then capital of Assam, and to other places of northeast. And he makes entry into his bungalow, which was allotted to him, and he finds this is quite well maintained, renovated by the Public Works Department of Assam, and he finds it to be made in the taste of the British বিলাকৰ কাৰণে বনোৱা তাৰ structure. So there is a portico, there is a veranda, and from the veranda he can observe. His first impression is the river Brahmaputra, the mighty river Brahmaputra. He came through the river journey, but it is his first view from the top of the land towards the river, and it is quite impressive. And he is also impressed by the presence of a tiny island, the Peacock Island. He says that this is an island which is existing within the river, and between the island, the Peacock Island and the mainland, there is a small channel of water. And he's telling this is named as Peacock Island, but I have never come across any peacock. Rather, I have come across some monkeys. So the thing is that this island was named Peacock Island by the British because its shape was like that. So it was like a peacock. But actually in the local language, this island is named as Umananda, the abode of the Hindu deities Lord Shiva and Parvati. So his first impression about Brahmaputra river is also the impression about this tiny island Umananda and a Hindu temple within it. And because of the temple, the monkeys are there. Because the monkeys are there to devour the fruits brought by the devotees. Anyway, so after that he finds that the mighty Brahmaputra has divided this land into two banks. One is the north bank, another is the south bank. And the north bank is very vast. He's describing it as a vast, remote stretch of flat, ageless land. Stretch of flat, ageless land. From the sandbanks of the river Brahmaputra till the Himalayan peaks, everything was visible. And he also discovers the greenery, the amount of greenery which he was never accustomed. Teo betena tenekwa greenery dekha na hai. Enekwa forest dekha na hai. Very rich forest in its diversity, the nature is presenting something very unique to him. And he describes about the Manas sanctuary, where he comes across the one-horned rhino, again a very unique experience for him. And he describes about the vast land and different animals and birds like wild fowls, peafowls, etc. And also he comes across lot many wheels or the water bodies, the shallow water bodies, where he comes to know about the variety of fishes, and he says that they are full of masir, a variety of common crab in Assam. So he's impressed because he is coming from Britain. Britain, you know, it is a group of small islands. So coming from small islands, coming from a different type of forest, deciduous forest, where the forest changes during the winter, the trees desert all their leaves. But here he is finding evergreen forest. And he is quite impressed. And then he is describing about the three seasons. The three seasons, how they are impacting changes in nature on both the north bank and the south bank. So he is telling, during the winter, it is a pleasant place. It is a place of scenic beauty. And he arranges the governor's Xmas celebration on the banks of river Brahmaputra. He is in charge, and for that also he gets appreciation from the great man. And during the winter, everything looks clear from the sand banks of Brahmaputra till the Himalayan peak. Everything is crystal clear. But during the rainy season completely transforms, completely changes the nature. Everything, everywhere there is water. Roads become muddy, slippery. And everywhere there is a problem to travel. But he is telling that there are two ingenious practices of Assamese people. অসমৰ মানুহ দুটা অসাধাৰণ সৃষ্টি তেওঁ দেখিছে। Itu ki? One is the bamboo bridge. The typical bamboo bridge made in Assam, which he is telling that they make a lot of noise, creaking sounds when a car passes over it. But they are very sturdy, very strong. And it is a very good engineering. And in a place where so many rivers, so many streams are there, so many water bodies are there, so these bamboo bridges are very useful. They are made by the local people and they are very useful. Therefore, he praises the craftsmanship of Assamese people. And the second thing also he praises, which he calls as ingenious also, that is the marboat. When two boats made of planks, katar now, duta, jitiya joda diye, two plank boats are joined together and people cross the river either by paddling or the small rivers by taking the help of a cable from one bank to another. So these are very new ideas he came across and he was very impressed. But at the same time, he is also describing his two experiences of the rainy season. One is when he wanted to cross a small stream by the horse, on the horseback. But when the horse entered into the water, by any accident he fell down and he was holding to its tail. And he was finding it very difficult to maneuver the horse. When he was trying to make the horse move towards the right side, it was moving to the left. And when he was trying to move it towards the left side, it was moving towards the right. Anyhow, he crossed the river. That was a very funny, risky, but enjoyable journey for him. And the second incident was when he was traveling by his car, and he's describing at that time, Assam was having most of its main roads on the river banks, on the embankments. And these embankments are very high and very narrow. So when the car passes, there are very small scope to maneuver. Besi jaga nai, horu thai, thek hoy. And in one such traveling, his car slipped. And it slipped for several times, and finally he came to the agricultural field. And he's having a new experience about the agricultural field in Assam in comparison to his land. Here he is finding the agricultural field is divided into small ownership. And every field is having the small banks to hold the water. So when he drove his car, he was having a bumpy ride. The car jumped again and again, and he was having a very horrible ride. But he is still praising that the engineering of the car at that time was definitely better because his car didn't suffer any breakdown. And then he is describing about the summer season. He is telling the summer season is full of dry and dusty air. And particularly when a car is going behind some other vehicles, then it gets blinded by the dust coming from the other vehicle in front. And in one such experience, he was traveling with his family, with his kids, and the ayah and the camping materials. The car was packed, and he couldn't see that the workers on the road were working. They were repairing the road, and through the dust he couldn't see, and he's telling his car dashed against a ramp, and there was a great jerk. He was afraid. He was fearing for his children. But nothing happened. But anyway, he is telling that this is a strange thing, because in civilized places they have small rumble strip, but here people have made 6-inch high ramps. So he didn't have that experience, so he bumped into it and he got the jolt. But anyway, the family didn't suffer because the car was packed, so nobody was hurt. But he's telling that the workers here, they work in such a casual manner within the dust, and he's comparing it with his European experience. And then he's also telling when he was going to the camps, in different camps during the summer, during the winter season, the water level goes down, and during the summer almost the water is not available, so they have to dig the soil to find the water for their drinking, and sometimes they couldn't find good water, so they have to use the alum fitkari ব্যবহার করে পানিটা পরিষ্কার করেছে খাওয়ার কারণে. So that was the problem on the part of a forest officer traveling extensively during the summer. And he's telling even in the channel between Umananda and Guwahati, the water also recedes, পানিটা কমে যায়. And in some year it almost comes to be completely dried up, but it never dried up. He had never seen it dried up. But the local people there believe that when this water will dry up, the British will leave India. And he's telling, I was not there in 1947, August 15, because at that time he was in Shillong, the then capital of Assam. So he didn't see whether the water dried up because the British left India. So this is a very light-hearted comment. He's not actually telling anything serious here, but he's telling that how the people commonly believe. They subscribe to certain beliefs in the magic of nature, in the characteristic of nature. And then he is describing about the south bank of river Brahmaputra. And he's telling the south bank reminded him of the English countryside, the English woods. Why? Because the south bank, it was more homely, distance less, and terrain smaller. It was having small terrain, small distances between one place to another, and homely. Why? Because he came across so many villages, human habitats. গাঁও বিলাক দেখা পাইছে, মানুহ দেখা পাইছে. So it was like the English countryside, and it is also very scenic, very beautiful. But on this side of the river, there are low hills and reserve forests in one block, and he finds this south bank more homely, more comfortable than the north bank, because north bank is full of wilder forests, but on the south bank it is more like the human habitat and nature together. And then he's telling that he had the experience of two particular forest bungalows which he liked. One is Kulsi and another is Rajapara. He's telling that Rajapara, which is situated in a clearing, it is in a place where everything was cleared, there was no forest. Few trees were there outside. So he liked the place, he liked the bungalow, but he was disturbed by the bats, Baduli. Baduli বিলাক ছাতৰ ওপৰত আছে, And the bats, their droppings, they were creating foul smell. The first smell of the bat droppings made his life horrible there in Rajapara forest bungalow. And he also came across the larger bats, which he never seen earlier. These bats are having wings of 5 feet, and they were living in the trees outside. And all these birds, they are fruit eaters. And he's looking at these two different types of birds, and he's telling that the large birds are less smelly, or they're less foul in smelling, but the smaller ones living in the house, they were extremely foul smelling. And in Rajapara, he comes across a big bill, and he had heard that this bill was created by the great earthquake in the first quarter of 20th century, and it was in wood, and this wood simply went down and water was collected and it became a bill. So when he was there, he also came across the skeleton of trees, the trees of the earlier forest, which were there under the water. Sometimes they were brought out and it looked horrible. So he's calling it as a macabre experience. Bhayankar eta abhigyata. Why? Because of the skeleton of the trees and the bats in his camp. So, in spite of the spacious bungalow, he didn't prefer Rajapara. On the other hand, the Kulsi bungalow was situated on a raised, wooded place. It was having lots of trees, plantations, forest. And it was also having two particular plantations. One was the teak plantation. By the time he reached there, he found it was almost 60 years old, planted by the earlier British officers. And these teaks were brought from Burma, and these are the best teaks in the world. And he's telling Assam is also having the teak, good teak, but they're good for furniture, but they're not used for other serious projects like building of the ships and all other things. So the British had planted the Burma teaks here. Now they are matured and they can be harvested. And he also narrates about the rubber plantation, but he is finding that these rubber plantations are of local species which grow to huge sizes, and they are not tapped till that time. Some of them, they grew like the banyan tree, and he's telling that this type of rubber, they are not comparable with the para rubber of the European rubber. These are not good types of rubber. So he is not interested in tapping the rubber here also. But he is telling that these two plantation sites near Kulsi forest bungalow had made Kulsi a very enjoyable place. Therefore, he is telling that Kulsi is a delightfully situated bungalow on a wooden spot above the river. And from here, he can watch the whole view, the panoramic view of the river Brahmaputra, the bird's eye view of the river Brahmaputra. And from here also he can watch both the north bank and the south bank, from the Himalayan range to the low hills on the north bank. Therefore, he is narrating his experiences in Assam, his pleasure of coming across such a strange land, strange species of plants, animals, fish, everything. And he is also narrating very interesting encounters. Once he came across a sloth bear carrying its baby on the back was crossing the road very lazily. And in another time, he also came across a tiger taking rest in the landing spot in the guest house at the Guwahati port. And sometimes he also comes across very strange animals or birds. So in this way, he is presenting here a very accurate, a very detailed description of Assam of that time, particularly of the north bank and south bank by the side of river Brahmaputra. And though the account is not closed in our syllabus, but we can realize that it is a very simple, friendly narrative. It is a light-hearted narrative without any malice, without any criticism, without any ulterior intention. এতে কোনো বেয়া ভাব নাই, কোনো কিছু নাই। এটা ফ্রেন্ডলি ম্যানারত তেওঁ ডেসক্রাইব কৰিছে। এই সময়ৰ পৰিস্থিতি, এই সময়ৰ জিঅ'গ্ৰাফি, এই সময়ৰ টোপোগ্ৰাফি, ক্লাইমেট, প্ৰত্যেকটো কথা অসমৰ। And all these descriptions are also true now. Most of the things are now true, though there are certain changes in the civilizational aspect. So, from this paper, we can discuss certain questions. Questions like, what is the impression of Assam in the eyes of John Rowntree? Or the comparison between the North Bank and the South Bank? Or the impression of the three seasons on the landscape of Assam? Or a comparative study between the Kulsi and Rajapara forest bungalow can also be asked. So I hope that you will be reading it, you will be enjoying it, how Assam is seen through the eyes of a British forest officer, and you can discuss and you can answer your questions.